Hi, and welcome back to Designing Your Future. We're now joined by our special in-studio guest, architect James Heimler. James, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Hello.
And here to tell you a little bit more about James' international work is Trisha.
对，我们今天请到了非常著名的建筑设计师 James。那 James 他已经有30年的建筑设计的经验，他自己呢，建立的 James 公司呢已经19年，他是 President， 所以他建立的那些房子啊，就非常的漂亮，那种高楼大厦啊，还有 restaurant 各种各样的房子，那他是著名的环境设计师。那等一下呢，我们来问问他有关他做这个行业里面的成就以及他的过程。My question to you is, for so many years you are doing architecture, you must have a heart and love to this field, right?
Yes. Yes. I got stuck in first grade designing houses and floor plans instead of the elevations.
Oh my goodness. So you build lots of buildings and
yes.
Since then, yeah, which school you went?
I went to Cal Poly Pomona and graduated in environmental design in architecture, so it's focused on the environmental design. We do mid-rise to low-rise buildings, and we do about 100 projects per year.
Wow, 100 projects. That's a very busy schedule.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, that's right. 接下来我想请教他的就是他一年要设计100栋的建筑物，那这是很大的工作量。到底在他设计的里面，他重视的是什么？他做的是这个环境设计哦。My question for you is, environmental design means different things to different people. What is your take on environmental design?
It's generally a holistic approach to the site and the neighborhood and the city and community. And so I start looking at an overall view of all the different aspects of the property and then getting down to the specifics. So for me, a site generally tells me what it's supposed to be. If I just got to make sure I know what all the aspects are of the site. An example, we were doing a house in Malibu, and I had gotten a chart after I designed the house on feng shui in terms of like the top 20 things you're supposed to do. And I had 19 of them without even having in order, without even thinking in that direction. So for me, it's a very holistic, just natural approach and bringing everything together.
So what's the difference between environmental design and architecture design?
Environmental design would be one aspect of it, of designing in architecture. And it's an integration of the natural pieces of the earth and then the energy efficiencies, the materials, where the materials could be reused or repositioned at a later date. And to me, you bring it all together as one building. So I started in the environment movement back when I was about 8 years old, but in terms of architecture, I'd say back in 1973, 74, I was getting much more active in urban planning and recycling and starting some of the first recycling plants in California. And so I take that concept into the architecture and try to integrate both at all times.
So environmental design is a bigger concept.
Yes, it's more of the macro picture, and then you can work with materials. So you don't start off with, I'm going to have a special kind of countertop. It's recycled concrete and glass. You start off with the space and how it relates to everything around.
Okay, thank you.
接下来我要请问他的就是说，在这个过程的里面呢，做这个 building 设计的过程里面，到底客人跟他之间互动的情况到底是怎么样的 ？How much client interaction is there during the process and the building process?
It's nonstop.
It's nonstop.
It's nonstop.
从不停止的。
Yeah, the communication part is probably the toughest part, and it's not just with a client. Some clients are willing to put in the energy for environmental design. Some just want very traditional. But it also comes with the cities and the approval of different materials, and that's the more political and tougher part of the project.
And I know your firm does a lot of different kinds of projects, industrial, commercial, residential, and is there any difference in approach on the different type of project?
Well, the bigger the project, there's more aspects you have to deal with. But in terms of the environmental side of it, it's really the same process. It's just you've got to look at more avenues in the complexity of the project.
Thank you.
So when the technology, like right now, the electronic and the computer evolved, is this have influence on the architecture?
Yes. I'll give you an example. We are doing some automated parking structures in Los Angeles.
Oh, wow.
And there are none on the West Coast. There's one from about 13, 14 years ago on the East Coast. I think in New York they're about to do one new one. So I'm taking this new system, which is, for America it's a new system, for the rest of the world it's not. and it hasn't been approved. We're taking new structural systems, new cladding systems for the outside that are more environmental, more benign to the environment and reusable, putting them all together into one system, and that's an automated system, and it's electronically parking cars.
Wow, so
And
what that looks like?
It can look like anything you want. It's a racking storage system inside a box, and the box could look like anything you want. So it can look like the building it's next to. It could be anywhere you want, but it's much more efficient in land use, and then material-wise, also good that way. Plus, you're not driving around looking for a parking spot. It's safer.
Wow, isn't that looks like I, Robot, the movie? They're just hang the car inside storage. Really?
It's just a storage system.
I've seen those in Japan. It's like an elevator kind of type.
Already in
and
Japan?
It's really, because
Yes.
the land is limited. So in Tokyo, you
Future
will
is
see a lot
here.
of them.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow, interesting.
Actually, in Taiwan, we have that kind of parking lot.
Yep.
too.
Wow.
And when I was in
Exciting.
Hansu, they also had it in Hansu. So
China.
in China. Yeah.
Wow, so actually for the rest of the world it's not new, but for America it's new. Why are we behind?
The approvals of materials and uses of materials and all the rules that have to be applied, and each city has different rules. But we go after the new materials and try new things, and the clients are giving us a little bit of leeway to do that. And it's always a little bit of risk, and it's never easy.
Wow.
But you've got to be tenacious with it.
Currently, there's a trend called new urbanism, where people are moving back into the inner city. And what aspects of that, and how does environmental design deal with those issues?
You're densifying the cities themselves. And you can do that, like the new urbanism ideas are almost suburbs unto themselves, where you go into the cities and put in higher density. There you're taking an existing building and creating more units out of it. And a lot of that now is being like mixed use, where you could have retail below, and then apartments, condominiums, or work-live lofts above, and we do that also.
And is there some political concern about displacing people who live in those existing buildings?
And I would say absolutely. If somebody's paying $300 a month in a very old building that's not going to hold up much longer, and it doesn't meet any of the current health or building codes, then you're going to redo that. Somebody's going to start renting that same building out, maybe at $2,500 a month. So there's definitely a displacement, and I get involved also in housing. So last year I was president of Link Housing. Link Housing is like the third largest developer of affordable housing in California, and I've pushed that to be more environmental.
Cool.
So in today's world, it's architect work usually independently, or do they work with environmental designers?
Architects can work with environmental designers. On the teams that I've been on, I tend to be the lead environmental designer of those things. But depending on the complexity of the project, I would bring other people in and create that team on determining what products or what is being used, because I'm not going to know everything. But there's a big team of people working on it, and an environmental designer, the mechanical engineers, the electrical engineers, even all the engineers involved are having their part of the environmental design for the project, and I need them radically, and they have to know what they're doing. I might open up their eyes to ideas, but they've got to tell me if it works or not.
So it's really a teamwork.
It's a massive team.
Thank you.
I have a question I always want to ask an architect. Right now the population is getting like more dense, but we need the trees and the glass, we need the oxygen. So how to solve this problem?
Well, you can do a building now and have green roofs, where the whole roof can be a landscape roof, and that roof will last longer and be greener. It also absorbs water, and so that you have less water issues in terms of storm runoff. You can do open shell buildings where you have more plants growing on them. I was doing a house at the beach, and we actually had the handrails were hydroponic gardens themselves. And then the water is used to store the heat energy, so then it can re-radiate it into the room, so you're using it for thermal mass and for greening and the oxygen.
Wow.
Well, you know, it's considering all of the environmental concerns that everyone is preoccupied with today, it sounds to me like environmental design is a field that's going to be expanding and growing and becoming more and more necessary in today's world.
Yes, it's also becoming required. A lot of the governments and cities are passing laws stating you have to meet a LEED standard or a minimum environmental standard. And Santa Monica, I think West Los Angeles, when you're over 50,000 square foot of commercial or over 50 units, you have to do it. It's not by choice anymore. So the rules, in my mind, are getting better. It's definitely tougher for the developer, and because they're not used to it. But and has some costs, and then depending on what you're doing, has some risk factors. But on the other hand, there's a lot of things that benefit it, and you can, within a year's period of time, on almost any of this, you'll be making money, not losing money. So it's a financial gain, but there's an upfront cost to it.
Fabulous. It sounds like environmental design is a career choice that people should certainly pursue if they have an interest in it. What advice would you give about education and where to pursue it?
You're going to always want to do research, read up ahead on things. That passion has got to be there.
Okay.
And that, whether it's just the architecture or the environmental architecture, to make it happen, you've got to really fight for every inch that you get.
So passion and leadership are
Absolutely.
two important qualities.
Absolutely.
James, I want to thank you for being here on
Thank you.
Designing Your Future today. The information you've given us is enlightening and insightful, and gives people a real understanding of some of the professional ins and outs they'll be dealing with. Thank you.
You're welcome.